Chicago, 1985. A 19-year-old walks into a pawn shop. On the shelf, there is a small silver box with a row of knobs along the top. He doesn't know what it is. He doesn't know who made it. He pays $40 for it and takes it home. What he found inside that box, by accident, by ignorance, by turning knobs he didn't understand, became the sound of an entire century of music. And the company that made it had already given up on it. To understand what happened in that apartment in Chicago, you need to understand what Roland was trying to do in 1981. Roland was a Japanese musical instrument company, one of the most innovative in the world. They had already built synthesizers and drum machines that were quietly reshaping how music was made. But in 1981, they had a problem to solve. Guitarists who practiced alone had no one to play with. No bass player, no drummer. Just a guitarist in a bedroom playing the same chord progressions into silence. Roland's answer was the TB-303 bassline, a small programmable machine that would generate bass patterns automatically so a guitarist could practice with something underneath. You programmed the bassline in advance. The machine would play it back on a loop. Problem solved. On paper, it made sense. In reality, it was a disaster. The TB-303 did not sound like a bass guitar. It sounded like nothing a bass guitar had ever sounded like. The tone was synthetic, almost alien, a buzzing, liquid oscillation that had no warmth, no weight, none of the qualities that made a real bass guitar feel like a bass guitar. The programming interface was unintuitive to the point of being hostile. You had to enter notes and timing separately, through a process that confused even experienced musicians. Roland shipped the machine to the American market with an instruction manual written entirely in Japanese. Guitar shops couldn't sell them. Musicians who bought them couldn't figure them out. By 1984, Roland had discontinued the TB-303, 3 years after launching it, having produced just 10,000 units. The machines drifted into the back rooms of music stores and the shelves of pawn shops, where they were sold off for almost nothing. Tadao Kikumoto, the engineer who designed the TB-303, would later say something remarkable about this moment. He knew, during the design process, that the machine could make those strange squelching sounds when the filter was pushed to its limits. He knew it didn't sound like a bass guitar. He left the architecture intact anyway, because he thought someone, somewhere, might find a use for it. He just didn't know where, or when, or who. Nathaniel Pierre Jones, DJ Pierre, was 19 years old in 1985. He was part of a small group of friends in Chicago who were obsessed with making music. Not playing it, making it, building it from machines, from drum pads, from whatever equipment they could get their hands on. When he walked into that pawn shop and saw the TB-303 on the shelf, he didn't recognize it. He'd never heard of it. He bought it because it looked like something, like a machine that might do something interesting if you could figure out what it did. He took it home. He and his friend, who would later be known as Jasper, synced it up with the drum machines they already had. They read what they could of the instructions. They couldn't get it to do what it was supposed to do, so they started turning the knobs, not methodically, not with a plan, just exploring, the way you explore a room in the dark, touching the walls to find out what's there. The TB-303 had 6 knobs along the top: tuning, cutoff frequency, resonance, envelope modulation, decay, and accent. Most of them had never been touched since the machine left the factory. When Jasper turned the resonance knob, pushed it past where anyone had bothered to push it before, something happened. The sound changed. It didn't become more like a bass guitar. It became something else entirely. Something that had no name yet, a squelching, liquid, alien tone that seemed to move, to breathe, in a way that no instrument had ever moved before. Pierre kept playing, Jasper kept turning. When Jasper started tweaking those knobs, Pierre went, "I don't know what this is, but we have to record this." They spent 3 or 4 hours in that session. They weren't making music they recognized. They were following a sound into territory that had no map. What came out of that session was a 12-minute track they called Acid Tracks. Not because of the drug, because of the sound. its corrosive, mind-bending, relentless quality. The way it got inside your head and didn't leave. They had no idea if anyone else would understand it. Ron Hardy was the resident DJ at the Music Box, a club in Chicago that had become ground zero for house music. Pierre gave Hardy an acetate copy of Acid Tracks to play. Hardy played it. The crowd didn't know what to do with it. He played it again. Still confusion. Some people walked off the floor. He played it a third time, and then a fourth. By the fourth play, something had shifted. The people who stayed, the ones who didn't walk away, had locked into it. The sound had done what it needed to do. It had gotten inside them. Acid Tracks was released officially on Trax Records in 1987. It ran 12 minutes. It was built almost entirely around the sound of a machine that Roland had abandoned 3 years earlier. It went around the world. By 1988, Acid House had reached Britain, arriving through import shops, carried by DJs who had heard it in Chicago and couldn't stop thinking about it. That summer, what the British press would later call the second summer of love, Acid House dominated club culture across the UK. The TB303 machines that Roland couldn't sell for $395 were suddenly selling for over $1,000. By the mid-1990s, the price had climbed to $2,000, $3,000, more. A machine that Roland had discontinued as a failure had become the most sought-after synthesizer in electronic music. And the sound it made, that alien, squelching, liquid tone that wasn't supposed to exist, became the foundation of acid house, of techno, of trance, of entire branches of electronic music that hundreds of millions of people would hear for the rest of the century. There is a detail in this story that I keep coming back to. Tadao Kikumoto, the engineer who built the TB303, knew that sound was in there. He heard it during the design process. He knew the machine could produce something strange and alien and unlike anything else when you pushed the filter to its limits. He knew it didn't do what it was supposed to do, and he left it in. Not because he knew what it was for, not because he had a vision of Chicago in 1985, of a 19-year-old in a pawn shop, of 4 hours of improvisation that would change the sound of music for decades. He left it in because he thought someone might find a use for it. DJ Pierre later described what happened that afternoon not as an invention, as a discovery. There's a difference. An invention is something you design with a purpose. A discovery is something that was already there, waiting for someone to turn the right knob at the right moment. The sound of the TB303 was waiting inside a machine that everyone had given up on. For 4 years, it sat in pawn shops and bargain bins, silent, until someone who didn't know what they were looking for found exactly what they needed.